Hello, this is Grant Hughes. I made a 3D model of the crime scene in Moscow, Idaho, where 4 college students were murdered. And those are Ethan Chapman, Zana Kernodle, they were dating, Kaylee Konkovez, and Madison Mogan. Now apparently Kaylee was a roommate there, but it just perhaps recently moved out. I don't know if all of her belongings were still there or not. None of that stuff's been made clear to anyone in the public. And then based on the city of Moscow and the Moscow Police Department websites, we have this information. Kaylee Konkovez and Madison Mogan were at a local bar called Corner Club at 202 North Main Street in downtown Moscow between 10 p.m. and 1:30 a.m. Kaylee and Madison were seen on video at a local food vendor called the Grub Truck at 318 South Main Street and used a private party for a ride home from downtown to arrive at their 1122 King Road residence around 1:56 a.m. At approximately 1:45 a.m., Ethan and Zana are believed to have returned to the residence at 1122 King Road. Ethan Chapman and Zana Kernodle were seen at the Sigma Chi House on the University of Idaho campus at 735 Nez Perce Drive. The Sigma Chi fraternity is actually very close to the residence. I mean, it's literally a 2-3 minute walk to get there. Detectives believe that on November 12th, the 2 surviving roommates had also been out in the Moscow community separately, but returned home by 1 a.m. on November 13th. The 2 did not wake up until later that morning. Now, are we missing something with those roommates? There's people out there that have said that they heard things and then locked their doors. I think police are intentionally leaving out what the 2 surviving roommates may have seen and heard that led them to locking their doors. We don't know that information. On November 13th, the surviving roommates summoned friends to the residence because they believed one of the second-floor victims had passed out and was not waking up. At 11:58 a.m. on November 13th, a 911 call requested aid for an unconscious person. The call was made from one of the surviving roommates' cell phones inside the residence. Multiple people talked with the 911 dispatcher before Moscow police arrived at the location. Officers entered the residence and found 2 victims on the 2nd floor and 2 victims on the 3rd floor. So the victims on the 2nd floor are most certainly Zana Kernodle and Ethan Chapman. And the 2 victims that were found on the 3rd floor are very likely Madison Mogan and Kaylee Konkovez. The Latah County coroner confirmed the identity of the 4 murdered individuals and their cause and manner of death as homicide by stabbing. The coroner stated the 4 victims were likely asleep. So everybody keep that in mind, that they were likely asleep. Some had defensive wounds, and each was stabbed multiple times. There was no sign of sexual assault. So that means they were sleeping when the attack started, and then they likely woke up and tried to defend themselves, but were eventually killed by this individual. Police believe the attack is targeted. 2 victims were on the 2nd floor and 2 were on the 3rd, as I just stated. Police also wanted to put out these statements. They said at this time in the investigation, detectives do not believe the male Kaylee and Madison attempted to contact numerous times on November 13th is involved in the crime. So those phone calls that they're referring to there were that Madison and Kaylee, starting at 2:26, Kaylee was calling her ex-boyfriend Jack and called him 5 or 6 times up until 2:44. Then Madison started calling the same ex-boyfriend Jack, from 2:44 to 2:52 and called 3 different times. And then at 2:52, Kaylee tried calling Jack one more time. Now, to me, that indicates that, either Jack didn't want to answer the phone, and the girls knew, either he was upset or wasn't answering the phone, so switched over to Madison using her phone to call to see if he would answer her phone, but Jack never answered any of their calls. Okay? Police are saying at this time they do not believe that individual, Jack, is involved. Kaylee mentioned having a stalker, but detectives have been unable to corroborate the statement. Investigators are requesting anyone with information about a potential stalker or unusual instances to contact the tip line. At this time, detectives have investigated the private party driver who took Kaylee and Madison home on November 13th and do not believe he is involved in this crime. They also, at this time in the investigation, detectives do not believe the two surviving roommates or the male in the grub truck surveillance video are involved in this crime. So when Kaylee and Madison left the bar that they were at 1:30, they went to this grub truck to buy food, and there was an individual that was walking with them and then stood back and sort of walked and tracked them, and he apparently was there to make sure that they made it home because they were really intoxicated. And then after Kaylee and Madison got their food, they went to the right and then to the left around the grub truck onto the street and apparently got a ride from an individual, and that person they don't believe is involved either. And the individual that was following and walking with them by the grub truck actually walks down the sidewalk a little bit farther after sort of waving at them, and then heads off in another direction towards a parking lot, perhaps maybe even his vehicle. And they're saying, at that time, that they didn't believe that person was involved. Okay, so, the two roommates come home, and they get home at 1 o'clock in the morning. All right? And these are their rooms, 1 and 2. I don't know which room either one of them lived in. So it was Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk lived in these rooms right here. Okay, so the killer came in. Maybe he tried to get in their doors, but they were locked. We don't know. The killer came in. Now, was the killer in the house before 1:45 when the other 4 roommates came home and hiding somewhere? We don't know that. Or did they come to the house first and kind of scope out the house, because it is a party house, and maybe it wouldn't be that weird if some random person was walking around in there, and maybe scoped it out, then left, waited, and watched, knowing that these other 4 roommates were going to be coming home at some point. We don't know. So the person, if they went through the keypad way, they would have came up these stairs right here. After coming up those stairs, you can see I just put that floor on now. There's the door from outside. They come up these stairs, and then Zaina and Ethan were in this room back here and were killed. So were they killed first? We don't really know the order of it, but police likely do know the order. And let me show you the next floor. So after coming up the stairs and killing perhaps Ethan and Zaina first, they would go through this little entrance here, which is a little drop-down step that you can see right there. And they would go up these stairs. This is the sliding glass door entrance. That's the kitchen right there. They would go up these stairs right here. And once going up those stairs, they would get to the top here and take a left and go through this door right there, which is the bedroom of either, I think it was Madison's bedroom, and perhaps Kaylee was even in that room, because if she had moved out and was just coming back to visit to show her car, then that means she probably wouldn't have her bed and all those kind of items at the house still, so she probably would have slept in the same bedroom as Madison. That's just a guess. We don't really have that information, but we have heard that she wasn't still living there but had been living there recently, and then had moved out and was come back to visit just to show the Range Rover that she purchased. So I hope this really lets you see the layout a lot better. So let's remove the third floor again. So if the person came through the sliding glass door and killed Ethan and Zaina first, I mean, that really shows a level of targeting where they intentionally went in there to kill these people. They you know, if they were killed while they were sleeping, and he went all the way into the door, you know, through the sliding door like this, through this opening, and then back here, man, that's really out of the way. It's not really like a linear sort of attack where it sort of makes sense. So this makes it seem like it is completely targeted. All of them, I believe, all of them were targeted, but there was one individual that perhaps got the brunt of the attack because that's the person they were most angry at. Now, the way the police could likely be able to determine the sequencing here is by blood droplets. So if Zaina and Ethan were killed first, and there's droplets of their blood perhaps dropping from the knife or off the clothing of the individual, and that blood is up these stairs here, then that means they were first. If they killed Madison and Kaylee first, you would only see Madison and Kaylee's blood droplets here, and then perhaps even droplets of their blood down the hallway here, and then Ethan and Zaina were killed here, and then after that killing, you might see some other droplets, and if there's any droplets of any of their blood heading out this way, then you know that that's where they exited. Or if there's blood coming down the stairs and they went out this way, then that's the way you know they exited. So if there is only blood going this way, we still don't know which way they came into the house, but it might indicate which way they exited. All right. I did see that police were filming what seemed like maybe they were looking at a blood spot with a camera. They were filming straight down on the concrete on the road out there, a really high detailed photograph on a tripod facing straight down, and they were filming something on the ground, and the street would be out in this direction compared to the what we're looking at right here. All right, so my guess here is that this individual is somebody who believes that they would be with a certain female if not for the interference with these roommates, and has anger towards them, but has most of their rage towards one of these females that lived in the home. Ethan, I think, was just stayed overnight on the wrong night. Okay, now it could also be that he was awake, that Ethan, Zaina, Kaylee, and Madison were all still kind of awake around 2 to 3, and maybe there was an individual in the house that was flirting with one of the girls and really thought that, you know, he should be able to have that girl, right? And they were all awake, and then that person leaves, and perhaps that's why the Madison and Kaylee called Jack. We don't really know why they called, but perhaps that's why they called, because there was somebody else in the house at that point, and then that person leaves, waits outside, perhaps up above in that small little wooded area right next to the parking area up above, and you could see through the trees, and waited for all the lights to turn off, and then maybe waited another half an hour. So we still have proof of life, if you believe, and I strongly believe, that the phone calls made by Madison and Kaylee it was made by them, because why would you switch phones if you're an evildoer up there? Would you really, use a different phone and switch around? It just seems like it's more obvious that they thought maybe Jack was monitoring their phone calls or screening them, and that maybe if Madison called instead of Kaylee, he might answer. But it makes, they're alive at 2:52 in the morning. And police believe that the murders happened between 3 and 4. So, you know, let's say it's 2:52. They're done making calls. They may have even been calling while they were laying around up in the bedroom. You know, we don't really know, right? Like maybe they were making, Kaylee and Madison were calling Jack while in the bedroom, on the bed, you know, just talking, listening to music and so forth. And then after that, they turn the music off. Or maybe they're even, you know, we don't know, but maybe they're still awake and maybe there's a little music playing, and that might have muffled what happened to Zena and Ethan. But, you know, the killer comes in between 3 and 4 is when they believe the murders happened. Yeah, and they likely would be able to determine the time of death based on the food consumption. So they probably, I think they could even hear what was ordered at the grub truck. They likely ate that food at that point, and then based on the, you know, how digested the food was in the stomach, they could probably tell the time of death, you know, very closely, and they believe it was between 3 and 4 a.m. Okay, so I hope this model helps everyone. To me, it makes it really simple to follow, even though it's a really convoluted house. I think this actually might need to be even a little bit further into the right here. The model, it's hard to do because I don't have the actual diagram that was put in Daily Mail is inaccurate because that was prior to some of the remodeling. Like the placement of different things isn't the same way. Yeah, so let's just look at one last time. You come in right here, you come up these stairs, you go down this level. There's one little step down to 2B here. Then you go up these stairs, and then after you go up those stairs, you come up to the 3rd floor, and this is where Madison and Kaylee likely were, right there. And Zena and Ethan are right here, and as you can see, they're not right on top of each other. And this one's a floor down, so it might not have been as easy to hear anything going on up here as you might have believed, okay? So, you know, it's always great to have a model here. It doesn't help solve the crime. It does help give people that are following the case a much better understanding of what happened. And it does let you see why it might be more targeted than you might have originally believed based on where Zena and Ethan were sleeping. Why did they go all the way there? And why weren't the 2 individuals on the 1st floor killed? Was it merely because their doors were locked? Wouldn't Zena and Ethan have locked their doors if they're, you know, sleeping together? Maybe Madison and Kaylee wouldn't because they're up on the 3rd floor basically by themselves, and they felt pretty safe up there. I don't really know, but I mean, this case is absolutely wild right here. It's amazing. Right now they have no people of interest and no suspects, and that is absolutely crazy. There's got to be DNA somewhere from this individual in that house, and if they have that, they have to fast track forensic genetic genealogy and get right to the bottom of this. Because I mean, if I was a parent of a student, I wouldn't let him go back to school there at this point. I mean, this is a weird situation. All right. So thank you guys very much for watching. I hope this helps out. And until next time, be safe out there.